The Boys and Girls Clubs of America are more than just swim and gym. Meet the Regional Service Director, coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at Pepper Gettings Recreation Center here on Oak Street in the heart of Myrtle Beach. We're focused on the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and we're visiting with their Regional Service Director, Nancy Frost. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming in town and coming here to Pepper Gettings. What about this recreation center?
It's fabulous.
Isn't it gorgeous?
The whole time we're standing here, lots of kids are coming in. So
I know.
It's like
here,
a great center.
Early in the morning at 7 a.m. to see these kind of kids coming in the summertime. I don't know what it's like during the school year.
Right.
You know, at 7, but here at 7, it is a special place. They've done a lot of upfitting here over the last couple of years.
It's
done
a pretty
it right.
facility.
Absolutely. You were in town last week, I believe, for some special activities.
Yes. As Regional Service Director, I work with clubs in all of South Carolina. So there's 19 organizations. So we have 3 organizations right in this area.
Right.
So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was meeting with Boys and Girls Clubs of Williamsburg County and Hemingway.
Yeah.
And then this morning I was meeting with the Salvation Army Boys and Girls Clubs of Conway, Horry County.
Right.
And another organization that I visited with was Boys and Girls Clubs of the Grand Strand.
Oh, great. Don Hall.
Right.
We like Don a lot.
Right. And I think you're having Pete on next week from the Salvation Army Conway.
Pete Crawford will be with us in early August. That's
right.
Exactly right. We're excited to get him in. And of course, to know that last Thursday you were here in town, I think you said there was a luncheon as well that you were able to attend and enjoyed that time.
Well, actually, there's a new chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals that was formed in Myrtle Beach, and they asked me to come to their lunch and talk a little bit about board development. It's a new group, but that's a great organization.
Great. Do they have chapters all over the country?
Yes, they do.
One down in Atlanta as well?
Yes, I've been a member for several years, but it's a good networking on fundraising ideas. It's also good networking for people that might be advertising that they need assistance or resource development directors or even executive directors.
That's tremendous, Nancy. Now, and you are not a Carolina person. You are actually, are you a Georgian native?
No, I'm from New Jersey originally. And everybody usually says that. You're not from around here, are you, Nancy?
I didn't say that, yeah.
But I've been in the South about 25 years.
Good,
And I've been in Atlanta specifically 20 years.
Is that right? What were you doing before joining the Boys and Girls Clubs of America?
For 11 years in Atlanta, I was the executive director of the American Kidney Fund.
Oh, great.
So similar to this position that I was the Southeast Regional Director and worked with volunteers, board of directors around the Southeast for kidney, renal care, kidney awareness, health fairs, things like that, and also to have people involved in a lot of our special events. And then 8 years ago in August, I joined the Boys and Girls Clubs of America in Atlanta. My job at American Kidney Fund was wonderful, but my job at Boys and Girls Clubs of America, I always say it's the best job I ever had.
Really? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You still have a special place in your heart, though, for kidneys and renal
Certainly.
care there, sure.
I still spread the message about are you checking your blood pressure and how about your diabetes. But it's interesting, though, that with Boys and Girls Clubs of America, I really admire what those 3 clubs in this area are doing with children, because they're the ones that are directly right there working with them every day.
Absolutely, and the Grand Strand location is very close even to this facility here on Oak Street. I know it's not far from here, down near Time Warner Cable, or right behind Time Warner Cable on one of the side streets. Of course, the facility in Conway is fantastic. We haven't been to the one in Williamsburg there. You said that's in Hemingway?
Yes, and actually they have a wonderful big freestanding facility, and it's the Rick Goings Boys and Girls Club, and Tupperware was one of the sponsors, but we were there meeting with the board of directors and doing an organizational assessment. How can we help our clubs in that area? And they're looking, like all of our clubs, on expanding or adding locations.
Is that right? Looking at expanding as well?
Right.
That's fantastic.
Expanding so they can serve more kids.
Sure.
That's the main reason.
Break down a little bit of the history of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. It's a national organization?
Yes.
For sure.
And actually last year was our 100-year anniversary, so the whole year was around our centennial. But in 1806, we opened up our, 3 women opened up a club in Hartford, Connecticut.
That's in 1806?
Yes.
Wow. I know. 1906, that big year, obviously. It was something in 1860 as well, right? Yes.
Yeah.
It was a big...
It was 1860. You're absolutely right. 1860 was the first one in Hartford.
Right.
And then they just grew their organizations, and actually it grew to 53 organizations.
Is that right?
53 organizations, and then they came together in 1906 and said, we need to form a national organization.
Yes.
So we really were founded from the bottom up. So last year was the 100th anniversary of that, but during that 100 years, we're still serving over 4.8 million children around the world.
No, around the world.
Yes.
So the Boys and Girls Clubs of America have even expanded literally throughout the world.
Well, we're on military bases around the world. That's
Great.
where we basically do it internationally.
Right.
So that if, just even in this area, that if a parent is deployed in Germany,
yes.
and then also the child comes and they move to Fort Jackson, there's a club there to serve them. So they have the same environment. And, it might be a little different, but they have that Boys and Girls Club experience wherever they are. And then, so we're in the 50 states and in Virgin Islands. So it's, they're really branching out, and the 4.8 million, we're very proud of that.
That is fantastic. Annually serving that many
As of
kids
this time, yes.
on a regular basis. That's
right.
amazing. That is amazing.
It involves to be officially a Boys and Girls Club member, that you have to sign up as a Boys and Girls Club member and be a registered member of these 3 organizations in the area.
Right.
But then we also expand out to maybe additional outreach in the community, whether that's with baseball teams,
right.
whether it's we're going into schools teaching about character and leadership development. So we do expand out that way then, and then hopefully they'll become registered members with our organization.
Right. And many of the events that are held, are they indicative of the particular chapters themselves, or are there ones? I know Pete's coming in next week, I believe, to talk about a steak and shake or a steak and bake or something with steak in it or shaking in it. Are those indicative of all Boys and Girls Club chapters, or are there things? I know Don Hall has had some very impressive events since he joined not long ago.
He had a golf tournament a couple months ago,
That's
I guess,
right,
in May
sure.
or so.
Had a helicopter flying in, had a lot
That was
there.
creative on his part.
He had one of the Myrtle Beach Train Depot not long after that, a separate fundraiser. So
right.
Are they different community to community, or?
And we don't call them chapters because every Boys and Girls Club organization is a separate 501c3.
Oh, good, yeah.
So they have their autonomy. They don't report to the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. We have membership requirements as far as number of hours that clubs are open.
Right.
And from the national office, we offer national programs. We have about 50 national programs, whether that's the arts, and every club nationally can decide which programs they want to choose.
Great.
So they are able to be creative in their own vicinity.
Right.
If you walk into a Boys and Girls Club, there could be 1 or 2 things that are similar, but since they're all in different type sites, if they're on military bases,
sure.
Some of our clubs are in, one of our fastest growing areas is in schools.
In schools,
yes.
Good.
So that, the good news about that is that you don't have to build a building.
Right.
And also you don't have the cost of transportation to the Boys and Girls Club. So you have the boys and schools over at 2:30.
Oh yeah, that is wonderful.
And
the schools have been receptive to that.
Yes.
Yes.
Probably about 10 years ago, before I started with Boys and Girls Clubs of America, our largest growth area was in public housing. So we have a lot of good partnerships where a lot of public housings have community centers.
Sure.
So they've opened it up to the Boys and Girls Club. Mm-hmm. And as we were saying with the Salvation Army of Conway, Horry County, we've had a relationship with Salvation Army for over 60 years.
60?
Yes.
That long? I did not know.
It's our longest partnership.
That's tremendous.
And then I guess within the last 10 years, we really started expanding on military bases. Mm-hmm. But like you were saying with the golf drop, the Salvation Army in Conway is having a steak and steak dinner August 12th in town, and that's their 7th annual, and they're selling tickets, and they want people to call their organization for tickets, but it's a fun event. And then Conway also does a 3-on-3 basketball. You may have seen that. It's been the last 2 years.
I have. That's exactly right.
So
Steve Crawford really promotes that well.
Right, and so they can do whatever they want as far as their particular area, since they are a separate 501c3.
What do you do exactly then, Nancy? What is your position? You out there supporting, obviously, those, you said 19 in South Carolina?
Yes.
Okay.
I work for the Southeast region, and we have 5 regions plus the military sites.
5 regions throughout the U.S.?
Yes.
Wow.
And there's about 15 people that work in my department, but we have 9 states in the Southeast, 9 states plus the District of Columbia. So we kind of divided up as far as territory. So I work with all the clubs in South Carolina, which there are 19, and then North Carolina is a huge state for Boys and Girls Club. They have probably, instead of 19 organizations, they probably have around 40, because it's a bigger state. But so I have 9 clubs in North Carolina.
That's tremendous. So a total of 28 clubs there for you.
And there's 8 regional service directors out of the Southeast serving those around the Southeast region. So my job basically is to be their liaison to the national office.
Good.
I offer my services to help them build capacity. That I'll do board development. Actually, I'm talking about board development last week at lunchtime.
Last week at the luncheon, of course, sure.
Training or strategic planning. All right, you have 3 locations. What do we want to look like in 5 years? How many kids do we want to serve in 5 years? And then also, if they want specific needs as far as building a new facility, we have a couple of architects on board, on staff.
Great.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So we have, proposed plans online that they can look at, and those architects will come as far as to look at their facilities, and even give them advice on coming to a facility and say, how's the safety issues here? Are we or the people at the doors when the kids come in and things like that. So
that's fantastic. Tomorrow we've got Bone Crusher Smith. Very exciting. Tomorrow morning on the show, we're going to have a world heavyweight boxing champion, and I think I've seen that Evander Holyfield is a former Boys and Girls Club member. Has he remained active with supporting Boys and Girls Clubs?
Yes, and actually Evander was inducted into the Alumni Hall of Fame a couple of years ago.
Right.
So he was at our national conference, but he went to a club in Atlanta, so he has remained connected to that club in Atlanta. And I guess probably in the early years where a lot of clubs did boxing.
Right.
So actually I think Evander came up through the clubs starting with boxing, and his director got him involved.
That's fascinating. We had someone recently on the show from the YMCA, and they highlight a lot of sports, maybe basketball and other sports, were actually founded at a YMCA. What are some of the exciting differences, if any, between, let's say, the Boys and Girls Clubs of America and maybe the YMCA or other groups that folks are familiar with? You all have been around a heck of a long time as well, potentially even longer than the YMCA, around the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how long they've been around, and actually we have very good partnerships with YMCAs.
Good, yeah.
A few YMCAs and Boys and Girls Clubs share space.
Right.
We have after-school programs, and so probably, I can't speak for YMCA, but I know that they do too. As far as what we offer at Boys and Girls Club is a variety of programs. Years ago, 50 years ago probably, they looked at Boys and Girls Club as swim and gym. It was only recreation, which was good. But now in our Boys and Girls Club, we have computer tech centers.
Great.
We've been very fortunate, a lot of our clubs, to have computers donated, and Microsoft has donated programs.
Oh, great.
Some of ours, I was at a club recently, they have a full recording studio.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
So kids are...
That's one in the Southeast here?
In Florida, in St. Petersburg, they have a beautiful one.
Is that right?
So they can be as creative as they want, and we do want to have a varied program. When kids come in right after school, they may have a little time for recreation, but the main thing is that they want to help the kids with their homework. Before we go into the computer lab, before we start playing basketball, but probably within the first hour, it probably varies from each club location. Actually, a lot of our executive directors have relationships with the local schools, where local schools may call and say, Johnny needs help with math.
Right.
So the club will specifically work with Johnny on math. And actually, when I was last week when I was in Hemingway,
Right.
I met with a parent, and she just raved about the fact that she knew when she got off of work that her son was going to have his homework done. And that
It is tremendous.
Yeah.
You're going to have a flood of calls to the local Boys and Girls Clubs if that's the case, and I know it is.
Right.
Because Don talked about that, the excitement of, and there are a number of folks working in his operation, obviously volunteering a lot of
Right.
man hours, person hours to be in there to support, but highlighting the real needs. Let's talk a little bit about how the Boys and Girls Clubs are funded. Where do the dollars come from? Are there ever needs for donations or volunteer opportunities?
There's definitely a need at probably every Boys and Girls Club around the country as far as we definitely need volunteers to come in. A lot of our clubs have musicians come in and teach how to play guitar.
Right.
Or I know we've had a couple of good steel band performances by club members, and
Really?
I mean, wonderful. So we need volunteers to help with those kind of specialties, plus volunteers are also tutors in the afternoon.
Good.
So we have a lot of good partnerships with corporations that their employees come in and help with that.
Great.
Financially, every Boys and Girls Club needs financial support, and it is supported by the community.
It is, yes.
Some Boys and Girls Club gets support from United Way. Some get like from special events.
Sure.
And also one of the areas is individual gifts. As you probably see across the country, every year they give out percentages of giving by people, or what people give to, whether it's health, whether it's after-school programs, social services. But over 85% of dollars to nonprofits come from individuals.
Is that right?
I mean,
Over
that's significant.
85%.
Yes,
Wow.
and every year it's been about 85, 86%. So we always say, you have to ask that individual for money. But with Boys and Girls Club, like any other nonprofit, we want them to come in and see our people at the club. Once you go into a Boys and Girls Club and see the varied activities that are going on. I can't speak for the club here, but a lot of clubs statistically can say to the community, this is how many people got from grade B to A.
Right.
And I know South Carolina, I think their dropout rate is over 50% of people that don't finish high school. So a Boys and Girls Club, all your local Boys and Girls Clubs can say, if you went to a Boys and Girls Club, this is how many of our kids have gone on to college. And actually, a lot of our clubs offer scholarships.
Is that right? Tremendous.
So a lot of individuals, sometimes that's something that somebody's interested in sponsoring. One of our best programs is Youth of the Month.
Youth of the Month.
Youth of the Month.
Good, sure.
Almost all of our clubs do Youth of the Year competitions.
Sure.
So it starts out Youth of the Month, and then at the end of the year, the club has a competition to see who's the Youth of the Year for that organization.
Great. Good idea. Yeah.
You may have a Youth of the Year from all the sites, and then they have to compete to represent that organization.
Right.
And then you go on to compete to be Youth of the State of South Carolina.
Sure, yeah.
So actually we had it in Greenville this year in March.
Yes.
And they come across, those other 19 organizations come together
Right.
with their Youth of the Year, and the age group is...
I haven't heard anything about that. That's wonderful. That's something we love to promote. I hope
that
you'll
would be
make
great.
sure to let Don and Pete and your person Mike there in Hemingway to let us know about that. We'd love to highlight those kids. That's tremendous.
Oh, they're wonderful, because the Youth of the Month program is specifically when you get to that stage. You can have Youth of the Month when different age groups, but
Right.
it's 14 to 18 years old.
Good.
And I just admire first of all, a lot of times those 19 kids never left Hemingway to go to Greenville.
Right.
So it's their first time out of their town, and they're meeting other club members, which most people, probably with any organization, you're thinking of, this is Myrtle Beach, this is Conway. So we do a lot of activities. In March, we took a tour of Furman University.
Great, sure.
A lot of times we try to get on the legislative floor so that they can meet the governor. So we've been really been very lucky on that.
That's wonderful.
So it is one of our best programs that I believe for, I should know this, but last year the state youth of the year for South Carolina was from Florence.
Oh, good, in our viewing area.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Absolutely. Very important. I wish I'd known that before we started. And so you're over the locations in Florence, or you're a liaison for the locations there in Florence
yes,
as well.
Yes,
oh,
PD area.
That's great. That's great.
And this year the young lady was out of the Low Country, out of a Hilton Head unit.
Good.
So what happens is then in June we bring all of our 10 Youth of the Years from all of our southeast states to Atlanta, and they compete to be Regional Youth of the Year.
Very nice,
And,
yes.
I don't know what I did in high school, but these kids, first of all, for the state youth, for the Regional Youth of the Year, all 10 are interviewed individually by 10 judges. So they go through the interview process one-on-one, and then all 10 get up during the luncheon where there's donors, where there's people from Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and do a 3 to 5 minute speech on what Boys and Girls Club means to them.
Wow.
And I just admire that they can do that. I mean, I probably couldn't have done that as
I know I couldn't at 18, 16,
high school,
14,
college,
18.
or,
Yeah, sure.
or in my 50s.
Probably, yeah.
And it is heartwarming to hear their stories because they're all a little unique. And usually there's not a dry eye in the...
I bet.
So this year, our Regional Youth of the Year, not to talk a lot about that program, but our Regional Youth of the Year is from Georgia. So the 5 Regional Youth of the Year go to Washington, D.C.
Great.
And actually, they get up, there's a congressional breakfast. So they go through the same interview process, but they also have to get up during a congressional breakfast, and it's named at a congressional event.
Yeah.
But for the last, I think it's like 47, 48 years, they've always had the opportunity to have a one-on-one with the president.
No. Oh, come
Yes,
on.
yes.
The regional one or the national?
National.
Yeah.
Well, no,
sure.
the 5 regionals.
The 5 regionals.
The 5 regionals when they're in
yeah.
Washington, D.C., go in and meet with the president.
And then there is a national one,
Yes.
Nancy?
And he's from the Midwest this year, but last year, 2005, the Southeast one.
Is that right?
The gentleman was from Biloxi, Mississippi,
Great.
and he did a wonderful job. Because of course, there's a little competition. You know, you want everybody,
yeah.
and if you have, when you get to that stage, anybody could win.
We like that as well. What can we do to help try to make sure that our boys and girls here, and have these principally been boys? What about that ratio of boy to girl there?
That's a good question. In 1990, because for years it was Boys Clubs of America, and in 1990 we changed the name officially to Boys and Girls Clubs of America.
Good, yes.
And a lot of our most of our clubs were serving girls, but we just hadn't changed the name.
Right.
You know, it's pretty equal right now because I was looking at the
55,
statistics.
45%.
Right.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
So and we have good programs to both groups. We have a lot of programs where the girls are separate as far as teenagers, talking about how to prevent pregnancy, how to not to get involved with alcohol, gangs. So we have a lot of good gang prevention programs that the boys go to, and then the girls, because that's a growing problem. I know it's a growing problem in every state. So it's very varied for the program, but it is probably going to be, eventually will be 50-50 boys and girls. So.
Maybe the girls will take over. It should be the girls and boys clubs. That's right, yeah.
Well, and actually...
as the father of a daughter, we want to make the opportunity for girls to get out there. And, we think about so many activities, Nancy, and for you, seeing so many varied programs and communities, are there programs that really stick out in your mind? You talked about the 50 programs, are the ones, we just got a couple of minutes for viewers that may connect with them. What are some examples of some of the programs, whether after school or otherwise, working in schools, working in public housing? What are some that stick out in your mind, just to name a few of the 50?
And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, so I'll just say when you said, how can we help about Youth of the Year? If you can have, those Youth of the Year at the clubs are willing to come on your program and talk about their experience.
We'd like to have some young teenagers who can really extrapolate for 25 minutes. That'd be great.
And, Reader's Digest has been a sponsor of Boys and Girls Club for years, 50 years. So they help provide scholarships. So we're also looking for additional scholarship because I know the gentleman from Hemingway, South Carolina is going off to Clemson. Actually, he's already there already. So he's got a variety of from Hemingway plus from the city of Hemingway.
Sure.
But the programs are, for instance, the arts. Sometimes you say that person contributes to the arts. Well, if you get that individual into a Boys and Girls Club, you can see what the arts programs that they can range from small arts and crafts to significant. We always do a national arts competition or a national photography competition. So, and a lot of our clubs do a good job of putting that artwork on. You know, it might be City Hall, it might be a recreation center like this, so that people can see what the kids are working on. So, and then, you know, we do need coaches. A lot of our clubs have football leagues, basketball leagues, soccer leagues. So, you know, soccer's probably a growing area that way. So we do need coaches and volunteers. Some of those are paid positions, some of them are not.
That's wonderful. Nancy, thanks so much for being with us this morning. I'm sorry we run out of time.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Made it in town last week.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Nancy Frost coming up next.